Hi, Salina.
Hey, Nikki.
And hey, everyone. Welcome to this week's Extra Sugar. Salina, go with me for a second. Picture it.
Okay.
You step into a time machine. You press a button. And suddenly, you're in the early 1950s, when television is black and white, live, and totally unpredictable. You hear laughter from a studio audience, see cameras the size of refrigerators, and there, on a tiny stage, is a young woman delivering a perfectly timed joke with a sparkle in her eye. Now, step back into the time machine. Bam! You're in late 2018. She's really jumpy, you guys. You said you were excited for the surprises. Except this time, you're in a high-tech sound studio surrounded by acoustic panels, a big screen projecting the early animations of Bitey White, a toy tiger who would debut in Toy Story 4 the next year. There, behind the mic, is that same woman, aged a few years, sure, hair a little whiter, sure, but there's no mistaking that sparkle in her eye and that wit that never left her. As the tiger's name would suggest, that's none other than 96-year-old Betty White.
Oh, Betty.
I'm doing that dramatic illustration to show you how Betty White's career spanned nearly every era of television and film, modern television and film. She wasn't just a star, she was a pioneer. She built pathways for women in comedy, she linked generations of performers and left a legacy that stretches from Lucille Ball to Tina Fey. So today, I'm actually taking a page out of your book, Salina.
Oh.
Rather than offering just a strict bio sketch of Betty, I thought it would be neat to talk about how Betty connected so many leading women of television and entertainment from the 1940s all the way up to her death in 2021. So we will start with kind of a winding look at her life and her career, but I wanted to highlight some of those women that she worked alongside with and that she inspired. Because, spoiler alert, I did do a quick read of her book.
I knew you would.
Here we go again. And one of the things that stuck out to me over and over again, she wasn't name dropping, but she mentioned a number of people that you're like, oh my gosh, she was contemporaries with these people.
Yeah.
She was friends with these people. And I just thought that was amazing. But there are also people that you don't know quite that well that she worked with or that she inspired. So I wanted to highlight them a little bit too, specifically women.
I had every reason to be excited.
Well, keep the expectation and excitement low because I might not deliver. But along the way, pop in with comments and questions if they're nice.
Hey, that mentality, keep that in mind for lunch today.
Aim low. Okay. So first up, I wanted to talk about her early roots and how she broke into TV. So Betty Marion White was born January 17th, 1922 in Oak Park, Illinois. It's worth noting here that television got its start in the 1920s. So several pieces that I read about Betty noted that she essentially grew up with TV. Like she grew up alongside it. I think that's a neat way of looking at it. Anywho, she was about a year old when her family moved to California, ultimately landing in Los Angeles. In high school, she was bitten by the entertainment bug. It became the only career she could ever see herself having. She got her first job in radio actually in the late 1940s, just as television was becoming more of a mainstream thing. Her radio job turned into her first big break in 1949, which was called Hollywood on Television. I'd never heard of this. It was a daily live show in Los Angeles. The way I understood it from her book, it was basically a radio show they just turned into a TV broadcast. So it was like they would just turn the cameras on and Betty and her co-host would just talk for like 5 hours at a time.
So it's a podcast.
So it's a vodcast.
Yeah, right.
Video podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, all the podcasts have gone
video except us because I can't handle video. It stresses me out. And this is why she had to stay camera ready for hours on end. It was literally like 5 or 6 hours a day. She had to be camera ready and the show aired 6 days a week.
right.
So it was a lot. So I thought that was an interesting way that the earliest television shows work. I don't know if that surprises you at all, but it just worked that way.
I mean, I don't know. I know so little about her early days that I think most of it will be surprising.
Okay.
Yeah.
Eventually, the main host of the show left, and by 1952, she was hosting the show entirely alone. Several sources attribute her as the first female television talk show host. And it was interesting in the book, they talked a little bit about how the main host was leaving. So they brought in a man because they thought women weren't quite ready to host a show. He didn't last very long. And they brought in another man and he didn't last very long. It wasn't negative. And she alludes to this a little bit without boasting herself. They couldn't handle the schedule. It was too much for them. 6 days a week to be on camera all the time, just talking. And so eventually in 1952, they were like, why don't you just lead the show? And she's like, why don't I? And she did. So yeah, after a while, the show graduated from either co-hosts talking to one another for hours or just her talking straight to the camera to something that more closely resembled a variety show. They incorporated sketches, including one where she played a housewife named Elizabeth. Audiences loved Elizabeth, which would mean just one thing. They had to expand it to something more. A 30-minute sitcom is what it became in 1953. So Betty's production company, Bandy Productions, which she named after her dog Bandit. You mentioned in the main episode how much she loves animals. That came up a lot in her book. So yeah, her production company, which she co-owned with a business partner, produced Life with Elizabeth. So if you're keeping up with her records, go ahead and add this one. This production made her one of the first women to produce her own TV show.
Wow.
So at a time when most women on television were cast in supporting roles, she was actually calling the shots. And this sort of pioneering, I think, is something that comes up a lot throughout the rest of her career. So at the same time that she was working on Life with Elizabeth, Betty launched The Betty White Show, which was a daytime talk/variety show that she hosted and produced. The Betty White Show would go on to have like at least 4 iterations over the years. Like if she was hosting something and they couldn't come up with another name for it, they would just call it The Betty White Show. And it just kept coming up through her career. I wanted to mention the first iteration, though, because it speaks to that sort of trailblazer. One of her first regular performers was tap dancer Arthur Duncan, whose appearances marked the first time a Black person was a series regular on a U.S. talk show. His appearances were the big break that launched his career. But because the show was syndicated nationally, television stations in the South threatened to boycott if he remained on the show because his performances conflicted with the racial segregation policies of the Jim Crow laws. But White refused to fire him, later saying that her thinking at the time was, I'm sorry, but he stays, live with it. When he was reunited with Betty in 2018, Duncan revealed that he was unaware of the controversy until years later. So she did all this stuff on the back end.
Right, and didn't say
amazing?
anything about it. Yeah.
So gracious. So those were the early days. But one thing that really struck me, again, as I was reading about her career was just how she kept evolving. She talked about this a bit in her book, Here We Go Again. The book is sort of, the tent poles of the book are really like how entertainment has changed over the years and how her career has sort of changed with it. Again, she speaks so modestly. It's really just an earnest account of how her career has moved. But it didn't really, I think it didn't on the nose call out the intentionality behind it. And I think she was very intentional with what she did to sort of keep up with things. So like in the 1950s and 60s, she became a familiar face on game shows like Password. She just really loves a show. She really loves a game show. That came up a lot. We talked about in the Rue McClanahan Extra Sugar how they used to play word games with each other on set. That's just because Betty loved these game shows and things like that. In the 1970s, her new era started when she joined the Mary Tyler Moore Show as Sue Ann Nivens. So we talked about this role because that's where B. Arthur thought Betty was just being typecast and she was going to play that same character as Blanche on Golden Girls. Sue Ann was also very in touch with her femininity and with men, a la Blanche. So Sue Ann was really a heel turn for Betty because to this point, she had been America's sweetheart. She was just sunny, shiny Betty White. Right. So it was a bit of a different character for her. Then the 80s introduced, obviously, Rose Nyland, probably her most iconic role. She was beloved nationwide for her innocence, warmth, and comic genius. And then by the 2000s and 2010s, she became a little bit of a cultural phenomenon again. She hosted Saturday Night Live. She starred in Hot in Cleveland and embraced the internet generation. She really loved that spot as her quote-unquote elderly lady on the block.
She danced to the Ying Yang Twins and The Proposal around a fire with Sandra Bullock.
Oh, she did. That's right.
An image that lives rent-free in my mind.
Good. I love that for you. So, quick illustration of how she spanned the generations of television comedy. I think you might have just answered the question I had for you. Is there an era of Betty White that resonates the most with you?
Oh, that's funny.
Her dancing to the Yin Yang Twins.
Well, like I'm sitting over here having these thoughts about by the time she hits Golden Girls, she's had 30 plus years on television, or 30, maybe exactly 30. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, she's a veteran by the time she is donning the clothes of Rose or whatever. And so I think that in itself is so impressive and just wild. And I love this idea that because she'd been around for so long, different generations are going to identify with different versions of Betty White. So I guess, yeah, I mean, when she really became baked into the culture in a way that can never be taken away again, I think really was in that last surge of fame. And so maybe that does sit with me in more of a way than anything else, but she'll always be a golden girl to me.
Yeah. It was pretty incredible how, again, thinking about that first Hollywood on television show she was on, because she was on the air on camera for so long, 6 days a week, almost nothing surprised her. And there were several comments both in her book and then in other things I read where people just kept commenting what a professional she was. Like thinking by the time she got to Golden Girls or SNL into the 2010s or whatever, she could not be faced by anything on camera because she had seen it all and done it all. And I think that's like, I just don't know that you have that a lot anymore. People who have grown up on camera like that.
No, but I mean, and I think a lot of times it goes sour. You know?
Yeah.
This is anytime we sort of talk in this area, it's like, what do I know? But just enough reading and just being around different things that have to do with Hollywood and seeing from a very outsider's perspective, like it is a machine and it chews people up and spits them out. So I think anyone who can stay grounded and maintain a sense of self and not change who they are or get caught up in some kind of addiction or whatever, or just like fall into the ego, it really says a lot about someone like her.
Yeah. I didn't bring this up here, but she was married for a very long time. She had been married, actually, I think she was married in total 3 times, maybe 4. Sometimes these things just like default to marriage or who they were as a wife or whatever. So I didn't really want to do that. But she was married for a very long time to the love of her life. And what fascinated me was when I was trying to go do some searching about just like her personal life. And, you know, there were some stories that come up a lot. She was very close with her parents. This is in her book. She talks about this. Alan Ludden was her husband. She very much loved him, and she talks very unapologetically about how much she loved him. She was really kind to her ex-husbands. They just were not on the same page and with respect to her career. But there really wasn't that much more about her personally available. Like she didn't have any kids. She loved animals. You know that. You know some of her animals' names, and you know some of the people that she circulated with based on what she put in her book. But there wasn't that much else out there. And I think about that a lot with Dolly Parton too. You know what Dolly wants you to know. Otherwise, you can't find crap on her. And I think that's what young celebrities need to learn.
Yes, it's too much.
It's too much.
It's like you're giving away a little piece of your soul. Don't do that. Save that.
And you're giving people a reason to ultimately turn against you because they will eventually find something they don't like about you. So that's a bit of an aside, but that occurred to me as I was researching this. It's also worth mentioning some of her accolades that she received. We've talked about pieces of this. So she won 8 Emmy Awards ultimately through the years across multiple categories: acting, hosting, and game shows. This was a fun fact. Several sources actually say she was the first woman to ever be nominated for an Emmy. There were a couple other places that it was a little murkier than that, but it came up in a few spots, so I wanted to mention it.
I feel like they should know.
You know?
Yeah. I totally believe that it's all, but like, get that.
Seems easy to fact check, but it's a little more complicated than that, actually.
Yeah.
She has a Guinness World Record for the longest TV career for a woman. Guinness knows. She had Kennedy Center honors, Screen Actors Guild Life Achievement Awards, an award, and numerous other recognitions. She had a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. She actually petitioned for them to give her husband one near her too after his death, which I thought was really lovely. He was, and again, he could be a whole segment, but he was a big game show host and a big like TV personality for a long time too. So she wanted to make sure he got his due. So again, beyond the trophies though, beyond the roles and everything, she had a real legacy in shaping the path for women in comedy. And she had a lot of deep friendships and mentorships across several decades. So that's another piece of what I wanted to talk about. Like I said, as I read this book, I was just overwhelmed by the sheer number of legends who were simply in her orbit, like especially in female entertainment. So again, I said she didn't really name drop so much as it was like, I can't believe I get to know these people. Right. So a couple of those that I wanted to mention are people that are you will know, and I'm not giving them any extra credit than they already have received. So I'm not adding much here, but it was impressive to me. So Lucille Ball, who was obviously the undisputed queen of early television and early comedy on TV, she pioneered live comedy with I Love Lucy. She was a comedian, an actress, a producer, and a studio executive. According to her Wikipedia entry, she was recognized by Time in 2020 as one of the most influential women of the 20th century for her work in all of these areas. She was nominated for 13 Primetime Emmy Awards, winning 5. She was the recipient of several other accolades like the Golden Globe Cecil B. DeMille Award and 2 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. She earned many honors, including the Women in Film Crystal Award, an induction into the Television Hall of Fame, a Kennedy Center honor, and the Governor's Award from the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. To bring it back to Betty, Lucy and Betty developed a friendship somewhere in the 1950s and remained really close friends until Lucille's death in the late 80s. The two appeared on Password and Super Password, those are TV game shows, several times throughout the years, and I thought this was really sweet. When Lucille's mother passed away, Lucille adopted Betty's mom, Tess, as her mother, since their mothers had been very close with one another. So Lucille and Betty were friends, and Tess and Lucille's mom were friends. Isn't that lovely?
That is lovely.
Betty looked up to Lucille, learned a lot from her, and they shared a mutual respect as women who made powerful marks behind the camera as well. So I found this grunge.com article. I don't know that's the best source in the world, but I found it. And it said, quote, Lucy saw Betty's fighting spirit. They were really feminists of their time when that wasn't necessarily the norm in Hollywood. Betty adored not only Lucy's sense of humor, but her mother and Lucy's children. They were definitely mama's girls raised by women who told them that they didn't have to take a back seat to any man. That nice?
That's very nice.
Another heavyweight that I wanted to mention was Mary Tyler Moore. So generally speaking, she's best known for redefining the modern female sitcom lead. Most people probably know her best from the Mary Tyler Moore Show. That show is credited with changing the game for women in entertainment by focusing on a woman's professional goals and accomplishments versus a woman's approach to building a family and a home. Throughout its run, the show won 29 Emmys, including 3 straight outstanding comedy Emmys, so 3 in a row, and Moore won 3 Best Lead Actress in a Comedy Series awards. The 29 Emmys was a record that stood until Frasier won its 30th Emmy in 2002. In the memoir that I read, Betty speaks to her respect for Mary's approach to her team. Working on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, she said that Mary Tyler Moore would open production up to feedback and collaboration from the performers, which sounds like was not common on TV at that time. Like you did what you were told to do as a performer, but Mary Tyler Moore was like, no, I want to know, what do you think, what would make this better? So Mary and Betty were friends long before the Mary Tyler Moore Show and remained friends long after. So actually they approached Betty about coming on to the Mary Tyler Moore Show, I think before they had even talked to Mary Tyler Moore about it. So Betty got to break it to her that she was going to be on the show. And Mary Tyler Moore was like, I don't always get to call the shots around here, but I'm totally calling the shots on this one. You will not be on my show. Just like teasing her because they were really good friends. And then when that character debuted on the show, the response was so overwhelming that Mary Tyler Moore and her husband at the time, Grant Tinker, showed up at their house the next morning with a basket or some flowers or something for Betty White to congratulate her on how successful she had been. They used to, Betty and her husband used to double date and double vacation with Mary and Grant at times. So they were very close.
That's cute.
Sweet.
I watched the Mary Tyler Moore Show, but somehow I missed all the Betty White episodes. So I've not even seen this like vampy character like at all. And it's like really hard for me to imagine, to be honest.
I think she didn't come on until like the 4th season, I think it was. So it's sort of later in the run.
I used to watch it on Nick at Night. Like
if it came on, I turned it off.
Episodes.
It seemed boring to me. So I probably should watch it.
Well, it's a 70s show. I don't know what that'll do for you now, but
our podcast it's bringing me back to the old classics that I missed because they seemed boring. What do you know? I watch black and white movies now.
That's what most kids think.
Yeah.
And sometimes 39 and 40-year-old women. But they learn.
They learn.
We can all learn and grow.
And we grow.
Yes.
The last person I wanted to mention in terms of like super famous people was Carol Burnett. So again, just super quick rundown of her accolades. She has won 7 Golden Globe Awards, a Grammy Award, 7 Primetime Emmy Awards, 12 People's Choice Awards, 2 Peabody Awards, and a Tony Award. She has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2005, the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor in 2013, and the Screen Actors Guild Life Achievement Award in 2015. For a lot of people, Carol is most well known for her 11-year variety show on CBS, The Carol Burnett Show. She was the first female to host a comedy variety series. Betty, of course, appeared on The Carol Burnett Show a few times, eventually spinning off with Vicki Lawrence and others too. Mama's Family. So that's their sort of professional connection.
But if you're me, Carol Burnett will always be Mrs. Hannigan in the 1982 version of Annie.
Yes. Yes. And she's so good in that role.
So good.
I love Annie. I had it on VHS.
Yep.
So the Carol Burnett Show was obviously fairly singular in its style and influence. And judging from some things I read, it sounds like Betty took a lot of notes from her time working with Carol related to timing, grace, and generosity in comedy. So giving other performers the space to shine. And it was the Carol Burnett Show, but it would not have been as successful if they didn't have all these other character actors and actors performing in the background. So that was sort of something that Betty took along the way. So there may have been some things in there that were new for people, but I don't necessarily know that too many people heard me say those 3 names and was like, who? Tell me more. I don't know anything about these people. So I thought I'd talk about a couple other people that, again, it's hard to trace connections with Betty unless they're just like widely known Hollywood lore. But I did find 3 people that I wanted to mention who you might not think of as like household names, but they obviously have really influential, a lot of influence in Hollywood and in comedy. So I wanted to give them their due. So first up was Susan Harris. We've talked about her a couple of times already this season, but I don't think we've given her all the credit she deserves. So she was the creator of the Golden Girls. But fun fact, between 1975 and 1998, she was one of the most prolific television writers in the business. She wrote for All in the Family. As you mentioned recently, Salina, her writing on the abortion episode of Maude received a lot of acclaim. She was also part of a comedy development powerhouse. She was part of the Witt Thomas production company with her then husband, Paul Witt, as well as their partner, Tony Thomas. So anything they created together was branded as Witt Thomas Harris Productions. So together, they produced more than a dozen TV shows. Other than Golden Girls, they did Empty Nest, The Golden Palace, Soap, and Benson. That's just a few of the examples, but she was inducted into the Television Hall of Fame in 2011.
It's really giving LBT Harry Thomason.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I imagine she and LBT must have either known each other or run in some of the same circles, because reading about sort of her timeline and what she was working on felt very similar.
Yes, if any of our listeners know anything about that and would like to share that, save Nikki and I a Google.
Please. Well, I Googled the heck out of these people, so this is not probably
if it didn't come
even
up easy, then
yeah. I get the sense again.
Please let him get along.
Susan Harris seems she just doesn't have a very broad public persona. I don't think LBT does either. The next person I wanted to mention was Selma Diamond. Does that name ring a bell for you?
Nope.
Okay.
I'm going to try and make a joke.
Okay.
Not even going to try.
You're welcome to come back if something
We'll see.
worth mentioning. So she was a Canadian-born American comedian, actress, and radio and television writer. She was best known for her portrayal of Selma Hacker on the first 2 seasons of the NBC television comedy series Night Court.
Oh.
The most obvious crossover between, I feel like, I might speak out of turn on this one, but I feel like she was the bailiff in the courtroom.
Roz?
Nope. No, she played, no, Roz is on Frasier.
Roz is also on Frasier.
No,
bailiff's name was Roz. But
okay.
not that Roz.
First 2 seasons of Night Court, she played Selma Hacker.
Okay.
Selena's Googling. Anywho, the most obvious crossover between Betty and Selma was that Selma starred in that NBC.
She was the first bailiff.
Okay, thank
and
you.
then Roz is the second bailiff.
There we go. Okay.
Okay, she looks familiar. Is that helpful for those listening?
Google, and you'll see what Selena's talking about.
Hair and skin. A hair.
Just the one.
She has several hairs, y'all. She's beautiful.
Anyway, she was actually in that. You remember I mentioned Miami Nice, which was the pre-Golden Girls NBC thing? She was in there. Okay. She was in that. So that's how she and Betty have sort of overlapped.
She could have been a Golden Girl.
Could have been.
I'm imagining there's a reason that she didn't go on to be on season 3 of Night Court.
I don't know. I didn't look into that, but that's a good point.
Yeah.
She was also a frequent guest on the Jack Parr show, which Betty was as well. And then less direct than those 2 examples of how they've overlapped with one another. I just thought it would be helpful to highlight how women like Selma paved the way for female performers of their era to shine. So Selma's screenwriting was actually the biggest part of her resume for most of her career. In the earliest days of her career, she published cartoons and humor essays in The New Yorker. And then after she moved to the West Coast, she was closely tied to huge influential entertainers like Groucho Marx, Milton Berle, the TV show The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, and Danny Kaye.
Okay, yeah, you're definitely giving an error there. Not error, era.
Era, yeah.
Excuse me.
And then the last person I thought would be interesting to highlight was Leela Bliss. So according to that book, Here We Go Again, one of the earliest and most important boosts to Betty's career came from the Bliss Hayden Little Theater, a small but mighty acting school and performance space in Beverly Hills. It was run by husband and wife team Harry Hayden and Leela Bliss, both of whom were working character actors in that kind of studio era. So Leela Bliss specialized in playing the kinds of roles early Hollywood needed, like mothers, society ladies, school teachers, concerned neighbors, the characters who built the world around the stars. She appeared in dozens of films and television programs from the 1930s through the 1950s, working steadily in this industry that wasn't super kind to women as they got older, if you know what I mean. I think her real legacy, though, is what happened off camera. So at the Bliss Hayden Little Theater, she helped train young performers, not just in how to act, but how to behave like professionals. She taught discipline, timing, physicality, how to take direction without falling apart. So Betty describes those early years at this theater as foundational. The discipline, the repetition, the expectation that you would work at a craft. So Leela Bliss and her husband were trying to teach these actors how to be kind of consummate performers and how to persist throughout their career. So alumni, I thought this was kind of cool. Alumni from the Bliss Hayden Little Theater went on to star on stage, on film, and like Betty, on television sets. Today, the school is known as the Beverly Hills Playhouse. It's one of the oldest continuously operating acting schools in the country.
Oh, that's cool.
So, kind of sum all of this up for you, these women formed a network of influential women who helped build television. Betty both benefited from them and also contributed to them and that network. She has connected multiple generations. So obviously she advised younger performers being on set with her. She became a symbol for older women in comedy, proving that you could still be relevant and funny and brilliant at 60, 70, and 80 plus years old. And several modern stars cite Betty as an inspiration. Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Kristen Wiig, Maya Rudolph, and Sandra Bullock, who danced with her alongside the fire, have all acknowledged her influence. So Betty's life shows that pioneering is more than being first. It's holding the door open for others and making sure the next generation can stand on your shoulders. Selena's cheering silently. You can cheer out loud.
Yay! I'm not, anyways, my bracelets are giving me away.
They give you away. Betty White's legacy is immense. She was a trailblazer. She was a first female producer, a game show master, a comedic genius. She was a connector, a mentor, a friend, and collaborator who linked iconic women of her era to the next generations. And she was a timeless performer, proving that comedy has no age limit and that warmth, wit, and professionalism endure. So Betty White made us laugh, she made us cheer, but most importantly, she made space for others to do the same. And in doing so, she ensured that the women of television, past, present, and future, would always have a seat at the table. So the next time you watch The Golden Girls or pull up an episode of Life with Elizabeth on YouTube or even catch one of her SNL sketches, remember, you're seeing the work of a woman who built bridges, shattered glass ceilings, and held doors wide open, all with a sparkle in her eye and a joke ready at just the right moment. So in the meantime, you know what to do. Leave us a 5-star rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. Visit us on social media or on our website. And that's this week's Extra Sugar.